compared to the trucks in the yard, there's a lot more adjustability in this truck. You've got all kind of adjustments, up, down, forward, back for the seat. You've got angle of back, adjustments for the seat. If you want to move the steering wheel, there's a pedal right there in the middle of the column. That wheel tilts and that wheel telescopes. It's really important that you get that wheel in a position where you can get that 10 and 2 on the steering wheel when you're driving and do it comfortably without having to reach way up and grab the wheel, because if you're uncomfortable, you tend to hold the wheel too low, and if you hold the wheel too low during the road test, he's going to be assessing points against you the whole time you're holding the wheel too low. To find fourth gear, which is what we want you to drive away in primarily, you're going to hold the clutch all the way down till it won't move anymore. You're going to hold it that way for a 3 or 4 count, and then you're going to get that clutch brake working. That's going to allow you to slide it into fourth. If it will not go while you're applying pressure on the stick, you ease up on the clutch pedal and it should drop into gear. Then this thing will drive right off without you needing to give it any throttle whatsoever, as long as you bring the clutch up nice and smooth till the truck is moving. You want to get over here as close to the center of this exit as you can, because remember, if you run over the grass and the dirt coming out for the road test, he's going to fail you for this. This thing is 70 feet long. When I go to make this right turn out of the gate, and this applies no matter where you're at, it applies coming out of the gate over at Olive Street when you take your test. You want to drive all the way up past the line in the middle of the road, whether it's a white line, whether it's a yellow line, and when you come around to the right, you want the left front wheel on the tractor just about touching the yellow line on the far side, which allows you to rotate the truck right back into the right lane without running over the grass and the dirt. Once you get straightened up and you're no longer turning, you're allowed to start shifting. Fifth gear is 2 moves of the clutch, 2 moves of the stick, straight back. It's a rhythm. It's 1, 2. After you go to fifth gear, you flip that button up to the high range position, because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to be looking for 6th gear, provided you don't have to stop. This light's red. We may have to stop for a moment. Now it's gone to green. My button's already up. The next move is 6th. That's up into neutral, straight over against myself and back. It's clutch once, clutch twice. If I want to go to 7th, 7th is almost straight up with my hand on the back of the stick, going 1, 2. 8th is absolutely straight back, hand on the front of the stick, so I'm controlling it all the way back into the 8th gear position. If I want to go to 9th, which is up, over, and up again, I want my hand about here on the stick, so I'm controlling it all the way through the move in the 9th gear. It's clutch once, clutch twice. I want to make sure I don't push the clutch much deeper than having my left foot even with the brake pedal when I push that clutch down. If you're pushing the clutch too deep, you're slowing the clutch down too much, which you don't want, because you're steady engaging the clutch brake. When you're making a shift, you only want the clutch to disengage just for a fraction of a second. If I want to go to 10th, which is straight back, pushing it away from me, it's 1, 2. I want to make a right turn up here on the Interstate 4 East. I want to be in 8th gear to do it. A downshift to 9th is clutch, gas, clutch. A downshift to 8th, which needs to be about 35 miles an hour, is clutch, gas, clutch. This thing's 70 feet long. I want to keep it up on the left-hand side of the off-ramp, or on-ramp, as it were. And then I want to apply a little power, because I want to pull the truck through the turn. Power gives me control. I want to dictate what the trailer does. I don't want the weight of the trailer pushing the truck through the turn. I want to be the one that dictates what the trailer's doing, not the other way around. As soon as I straighten it up, I get a left turn signal on. I go back to 9th gear, which is clutch, clutch. And then I pretty much stand on that accelerator because I'm trying to merge with traffic on the interstate. Once I'm all the way out, I cancel that turn signal. 10th is 2 moves straight back. 2 short moves of the clutch. 1, 2. It's important that every time I move the clutch, I move the stick in sync with the movement of the clutch pedal. If I'm pushing the clutch down, then trying to move the stick and trying to play catch up with it, it throws the timing and the rhythm off. And if there's any secret to this at all, it's just moving the stick and the clutch in a certain kind of timing with a certain kind of rhythm. As the RPM of the engine rises and as the RPM of the engine starts to fall. Because it's also important, as soon as I clutch it to make that shift, my right foot is completely off the accelerator the entire time I'm trying to finish that shift. I only go back to the power when I've completed the second half of the double clutch and I've got the clutch completely up and my foot is no longer resting on the clutch pedal. I want to get off at this first exit. So when I approach the exit and get sort of close, I'm going to give it a turn signal. As I ease off onto the off ramp, I'm going to slow the truck slightly with a small application of brake. When it drops below 50, I'm going to 9th, which is clutch, gas, clutch. I'm welcome to cancel that turn signal. I won't need it again until I stop up here at the traffic light where I'm going to be required to make a right turn. I want to slow down as I approach. When my speed nears 35, I'm going to go to 8th, which is out of 9th, halfway over to me and back. I clutch it, I gas it, I clutch it again. If my speed falls to 25, I'm going to 7th, which is 3 moves straight up. I clutch it, I gas it, I clutch it again. If I slow on down and go to 6th, it's clutch, gas, clutch. And if for some reason that light turns green before I stop, I can roll through that turn and make that entire turn in 6th gear without having to stop the truck. Once I stop, however, my clutch stays on the floor, the button goes down into the low range position, I come up, over, and up again for 4th. I want to end up in the right hand lane, but I cannot let the trailer hit the grass or the curb, the edge of the road, so I'm going to watch my right mirror all the way through the turn, keeping it as close to the curb as I can. Once I've made the turn, 5th is straight back again. It's clutch once, clutch twice. If you guys can see how far I'm moving this clutch pedal, it's not far. It's clutch once, clutch twice. 7th is almost straight up with the same rhythm of the clutch and the stick. Clutch once, clutch twice. A lot of people respond better instead of clutch once, clutch twice. They think about this. They think about neutral, gear, because that's basically what you're doing. You're shifting it to neutral, then you're shifting it to the gear. You're doing 4 things. You're moving the clutch twice and the stick twice, but you're doing them kind of in a little 2-step dance. It's 1, 2. And once you find a rhythm that works for you, you try to shift it like that each and every time. If you watch my feet when I'm doing a downshift, I've got to alternate the feet. I've got to clutch it to take it out of gear. I've got to raise the clutch completely. I've got to rev the engine. Then I have to apply the clutch again to make that downshift. If I'm pushing both feet at the same time, or if I'm holding the clutch pedal down while trying to make this downshift, it's going to grind. I'm going to clutch it, weight of the foot's completely off the clutch. I rev it, then I clutch it again and stick that thing into gear as my foot's coming off of the accelerator. You've got to alternate those feet. It's 3 steps. Clutch it, gas it, clutch it again. I'm going to move that wheel back down. Then I'm going to shift back to 8th gear again. It's 2 moves. Clutch once, clutch twice. Speed limit is 45 through here. I'm expected to run at least 40 for the test because I'm only allowed to run as slow as 5 miles an hour under the limit. I can run 40 in 8th gear, but the engine's not really happy. I could go to 9th, which is clutch once, clutch twice, and then the engine's in a much happier place running 40 or so miles an hour. I'm going to again apply a little power to pull the truck through the turn. Or at the very least, I'm not going to cut the power. I'm going to maintain some sort of power to pull that tractor and trailer through that turn. Making sure that I stay close to this side of the road in this left-hand curve so that my trailer stays out of the lane next to me. I'm trying to focus on both the convex mirrors on the left-hand, right-hand side of the truck to make sure that I'm as centered up in this roadway as I can. I need to be able to see about a foot of space between my truck in the white line on the right side of the road and my truck in the broken white line on the left side of the road. I've got some traffic slowing me down. I'm going to go to 8th gear with a downshift. I'm going to clutch it, gas it, clutch it again. If I continue to slow, if I drop to 25, I'm going to 7th, which is straight up. It's 3 moves. Clutch it, gas it, clutch it. If I slow down further, I'm welcome to go to 6. I clutch it, I gas it, I clutch it again, making sure that I'm moving that stick through this H-shaped shifting pattern. It's called an H pattern because that shifting pattern is like 2 capital H's Siamesed right against each other. If I'm not moving the stick in the proper orientation through the proper movements to find each gear, it makes it really difficult to shift this truck. If you don't get it out of the gear it's in really cleanly, it makes it extremely difficult to put it in the gear that you're trying to place it in. Now I'm a little too far from that car. The rules say I've got to stop far enough back that I can see where his back tires touch the ground, so I can ease right up there to that point, and then I can wait. When I'm taking the test, I'm not allowed to take the truck out of gear and take it and rest my left leg. I'm required to sit in gear, holding the clutch down, ready to drive away smoothly when that light changes and that traffic drives away. The reason being, they want you ready to go when that traffic drives away, because they know you have to apply the clutch and hold it for 2 or 3 seconds to get the clutch brake to work before you can slip the truck into gear. They don't want you panicking and grinding at it and not be able to get it into gear to drive away smoothly, because they want you ready to go whenever the traffic drives away. Once the traffic starts to move, I can bring the power up to around 1500 RPM and I can shift it. 5th is straight back, pushing the stick away from me and back. 1, 2. I got to make sure I'm not pulling it towards me, which will not allow me to find 5th gear cleanly. I go to high range. 6 is up, over, back, with 2 moves of the clutch and 2 moves of the stick. 7th is almost straight up, letting the stick move itself. 1, 2. It's a very tiny movement. I've got to make sure I've got my arm at a 90-degree angle to my body so that I'm pushing straight up with it. Same thing goes for that move to 8. Hand on the front of the stick, it's 2 moves straight back. 1, 2. Because if I pull it this way or that way, I'm going to hit the space between either 6th and 8th or 10th and 8th. I can ease right up here and stop in this gear, only pushing the clutch down in the last 20 or 30 feet. I don't need that clutch any earlier. In fact, if I push the clutch down too early, he's going to give me, or I should say, he's going to assess points against me for excessive coasting. I'm only allowed to push the clutch down 1 length of the tractor and trailer before I actually come to a stop. So only in about the last 60 feet. 5th is straight back again. 1, 2. High range at that point. So I don't have to remember to do it when I go 1, 2 to 6th gear. 7th is almost straight up. It's clutch, clutch, or 1, 2, whatever sets a rhythm in your mind. 8th is straight back. It's neutral, gear. It's important that I find a rhythm that works for me, and I try to stick like that every time. I want to make a right turn right up here. 7th is 3 moves straight up. I clutch it, I gas it, I clutch it again. It's a quick hit of the accelerator. Not bringing the RPM up lazily. 6 is clutch, gas, clutch. And now I've got a red light, which is going to cause me to stop. A lot of people are uncomfortable with revving the engine when they're either rolling up on traffic or when they're coming to a stop like that. But if you're trying to fight your way through a downshift, if the truck is already out of gear, it doesn't matter how much you rev the engine, the truck's not going to leap forward. If the truck is already out of gear, you have to have the clutch pedal completely up in a fully raised position while you're trying to adjust that RPM to make a downshift, because if the clutch is depressed any, the downshift won't work. I want to go out about to this broken yellow line. I got to bring it back around, just touching the yellow line in the middle with my left front tire, and then I can rotate that thing right back in the right lane, keeping it close but not running over the curb with it. 5th is 2 moves straight back. Once again, I go to high range. 6th is neutral gear. 7th is once again neutral gear. I've got to stay way up to the right in this weird little narrow turn so that my trailer doesn't get in the lane next to me. I've got to get comfortable with taking the front of the truck farther one way or another than I'm comfortable with, because a lot of times you have more room than you think, because looking out this way or that way doesn't always tell the story. The only thing that really tells where the tractor and trailer at is to mind these mirrors when you're in a turn like that. I know everybody wants to focus on what's going on in front of them, but that's not necessarily enough. You've got to look at everything. You've got to do some serious multitasking when you're doing this. So there shouldn't be any reason he would bring you this way. But if he does, notice this stop sign is set back from the white stop bar. It's my concern that if you roll through the stop sign all the way to the stop bar, he could fail you because you've essentially run the stop sign. Once you stop at the stop sign, you're welcome to ease forward. And if the path is clear, you've already made your stop, you do not have to stop again. But you've got to go deep into the intersection because this is a really odd angle. Left front wheel needs to hug this curb, which allows you to then pivot the truck right back in the right lane without running over the edge of the road and failing. And then you start shifting again as soon as you straighten the truck up. Because if you're shifting while you're turning, he's going to assess points against you. He wants all turns made with 2 hands on the wheel. Once you've straightened up the wheel, 5th is straight back. It's 1, 2. You go to high range at that point. 6th is up into neutral, over against you, and straight back. It's an awkward move. It's neutral gear, because if you sit farther forward in the seat than I do, if you're smaller in stature, it's going to feel like you're pulling the stick back here past yourself, almost behind you, because it's an awkward move. Once I stop, I put the button down before I take it out of 6th, so that when I slip it into neutral, it changes to low range on its own, and I know I'm actually in 4th gear when I go to stop. Again, I can shift if I'm not turning the wheel. I'm going to go to 5th, which is 1, 2, and then I get 2 hands on the wheel to make the turn. Notice I wasn't shifting while I was turning the wheel. Now that I've straightened the wheel up, I go to high range, and then 6 is all the way over to me and back. It's 1, 2. As long as I'm not physically turning the wheel one way or another, I'm allowed to shift gears right up to the point where I'm actually turning the steering wheel. Once I've got to initiate a turn, my right hand has to come off the stick onto the wheel the entire time I'm making the turn. Once I've finished the turn, however, and that means once I've brought the wheel back around until it's straight, even if the trailer is still trying to finish the turn, I'm allowed to grab the stick and start shifting again because I'm no longer physically turning the steering wheel. The entire vehicle doesn't have to be around the turn to allow me to start shifting. As long as I'm through turning the wheel, everything's good. As long as I'm shifting, I'm allowed to leave my hand on the stick, provided I'm not making a turn. Once I find a gear I'm going to be in for more than a few seconds, he wants to see that right hand back on the steering wheel. If I'm sitting at a light like this and I'm trying to drive away as the light turns green, I'm allowed to shift as I travel through the intersection. But let's say I rolled up to this intersection and the light was green and I managed to drive through the intersection at 30 or 35 miles an hour without stopping. At that point, there's no shifting going all the way through the intersection while both hands are on the wheel looking left and right, checking for traffic 6 different times. Twice as I'm approaching, twice when I'm in the intersection, twice in my mirrors as I go out the other side of the intersection. Because I'm just starting to get rolling and the only way to accelerate the truck is to shift, I'm going to go to 5th, which is 1, 2. I'm going to go to high range. I'm going to go to 6th, which is 1, 2. Watching my mirrors to make sure I didn't drag my trailer into the opposite lane. 7th is 2 moves straight up. It's clutch once, clutch twice. Hand back on the wheel. If I was going to look for 8th, I could have left my hand on the stick. But I've got a 90-degree blind left-hand turn that I want to be in 6th gear to negotiate. This turn has a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm going to slow down to 15 and go to 6th. If anyone's coming at me in this turn, I can't make this turn without running over them. So I'm going to run the truck all the way up in the grass. If you guys can look in the left mirror over here, you can see how far I've got to take the truck to keep the trailer out of the opposite lane. Now, he shouldn't take you through a turn like that on the test, but if he does, and you meet a vehicle in a curve like that, you've only got 2 choices. Run the front of your truck deep up off the road, or stop to let that other traffic proceed before you can go on down the road. Otherwise, you're going to drag your trailer in their lane, and if your trailer's in their lane and they hit you, that's your fault because you're in their lane. I've got to wait for that vehicle to leave because I can't make a turn with anybody at that stop sign. This truck is 70 foot long. I've got to come all the way out, cross the white stop bar, watching all my mirrors so I can rotate that truck right back in the right lane and not run over the sidewalk. Once I straighten up the truck, I'm welcome to start shifting again. Again, 5th is neutral gear. High range at that point. 6th is up, over, back. It's neutral gear. 7th is nearly straight up. It's neutral gear. Speed limit on this road is 35 miles an hour, so I should be in 8th gear. That's where they want to see you if the speed limit is 35, because 3 plus 5 is 8. 8th is straight back. It's 1, 2. Now I'm allowed to run 5 under, but since the speed limit is 35, he would really like to see me in 8th gear, even though I want to run 30. Engine's kind of loafing along, not really in a good power range. I'd like to keep it about 2 or 3 miles an hour under the limit. I'm watching the distance to that vehicle in front of me. If the speed limit were any faster right here, I'd have to back off some more. This is the gate at Olive Street. When you guys come up out of this gate, you better be right in the center of that gate, or you run over the grass and the dirt and you fail right there coming out. It's really kind of narrow. You need to be in the center of the gate, if not a few feet closer to the gate on your left side. Even then, you've got to come all the way up past the yellow line in the center before you can start that turn. So that means you have to make sure there's no traffic coming from either direction before you try to make that turn and come out of that gate at Olive Street. Because if there's a vehicle coming from your right-hand side and you try to shorten that turn up by staying in your lane all the way through the turn, you're probably going to run into the grass and the dirt coming out of the gate, and he's going to be forced to fail you for that. When you make this right turn on the Wabash, if that light's green, you can make that turn in 6th gear. Otherwise, you're going to want to stop and go to 4th. This thing is 70 feet long. There's a manhole cover in the middle of the intersection. I want the front of this truck even with the manhole cover before I start my turn. With the test truck, you want to be about 4 feet this side of the manhole cover before you start to turn. But you watch the mirrors on the right side all the way through the turn, making sure that you don't hit the curb or the guardrail, and making sure you look left and right for a train while you keep moving. And you can't get in this turn lane right here on the other side of the railroad track. You got to miss the turn lane. No shifting while any of the truck or trailers on the track. Once the trailer's clear, you can go to fifth, which is neutral gear. This is where you're going to do your roadside stop start. You need to take this truck off the road early so that when you get up here and stop, when that examiner needs you to stop, you're nice and straight and parallel to the roadway, and you're no longer blocking that gate at that Publix warehouse. With this truck, you want to see about 6 feet of pavement here in front of you. With the test truck, because the test truck is shorter, you want to see about 15 feet of pavement here in front of you, because when you go to drive out, if you drive out lazy and you run that trailer over the end of that curve, there where that grass runs out, he'll fail you for that. So once you stop here, you apply the brake, you turn your 4-ways on, and then you tell him, if I sat here longer than 10 minutes, I'd have to put my 3 red reflective triangles out at those appropriate distances in front of and behind my truck. He may ask you some other questions, or he may not, and then he's going to say, let's make sure it's safe, let's drive back out on the roadway. That's why he wants you nice and straight and parallel when you get stopped, so that you can see if there's anybody coming, because if there is, it's not safe to pull out. If that trailer's not straight, you can't see if there's anybody coming or not. That's good, Jordan.